The debt we owed. The stars twinkled softly in the distance as humanity made its stand on the edge of the galaxy. In a vast, uncharted sector, a human fleet had found itself in the midst of a battle that would change everything. The galactic powers had underestimated Earth, believing that the small, relatively young species wouldn't have the courage, the strength, or the resources to fight back. But they had made a grave mistake. Humanity had always been underestimated. For years, Earth had remained in the shadows, watching as alien civilizations waged their wars and expanded across the stars. Earth had kept to itself, building up its strength quietly, hidden from the eyes of the galaxy. But then, everything changed. One alien species, known as the Sargacs, had come to Earth's aid. The Sargacs were an ancient and powerful race, renowned for their technology and wisdom. When Earth was at the brink of destruction, the Sargacs offered help, intervening just in time to turn the tide of the war. They shared their knowledge, their technology, and their resources to save humanity from certain doom. For a moment, Earth felt a deep sense of gratitude. Humanity owed them everything. However, there was one thing the Sargacs never told humanity: the price of their assistance. In the quiet, hidden corners of the galaxy, there had been whispers. Whispers of a secret pact, a bargain made in the shadows, one that would come due when the time was right. But no one had spoken of it openly. Humanity had been too busy celebrating its survival, too relieved to think of anything beyond the immediate threats. Years passed. The Sargacs faded into the background, becoming little more than a distant memory to most. Humanity continued to grow, to expand, to conquer new frontiers of space. They had learned much from the Sargacs, but they had never forgotten the quiet promise, the debt that would one day have to be repaid. And then the message came. It wasn't much, just a simple transmission, a series of numbers, followed by a brief, cryptic message. It's time to fulfill the debt. Prepare yourselves. Humanity's leaders were stunned. They had assumed that the Sargacs were long gone, forgotten. But now, the message made it clear. The time had come to pay the price. The message was broadcast across the galaxy, reaching every corner of human civilization. It didn't take long for the fear to spread. What could the Sargacs possibly want in exchange for their help? And why had they waited so long to collect? There was no way of knowing, but one thing was certain. Whatever it was, humanity was not prepared for it. As the panic set in, the leaders of Earth convened in secret. The first instinct was to deny the message, to dismiss it as a hoax or a trap. But deep down, they knew better. The Sargacs had always been known for their precision, their control. They didn't make mistakes, and they certainly didn't issue threats lightly. Humanity had only one option: to respond. A ship was quickly assembled. A single vessel, equipped with the finest technology humanity had to offer. It wasn't much when compared to the fleets of galactic empires, but it was all humanity could afford. The ship would be sent to the Sargacs' homeworld, to face whatever fate awaited. The crew was small, just a handful of the bravest soldiers, scientists, and diplomats that Earth had to offer. They had no idea what they would find on the Sargacs' world, or what kind of test awaited them. All they knew was that they were about to face the consequences of humanity's debt. As the ship prepared for launch, the weight of the moment settled in. The crew members, each one of them handpicked for their courage, tried to keep their emotions in check. Some were afraid, others were eager for the chance to prove themselves, but all of them were united by one thing: the understanding that they were about to face the unknown. The countdown began. The engines roared to life, and the ship slowly lifted off the ground, heading for the stars. The crew members watched silently as Earth shrank beneath them, their hearts heavy with the burden of their mission. They were about to fulfill a promise made long ago, a promise they didn't fully understand. They had helped humanity survive, but now they would have to face whatever the Sargacs wanted in return. The ship soared into the depths of space, heading toward a future shrouded in mystery and fear. As the stars stretched out before them, the crew couldn't help but wonder what awaited them on the other side. Would they find the Sargacs waiting, ready to collect their debt? Or would they uncover something even darker, something that had been hidden for centuries? The journey had begun, and there was no turning back. The crew held their breath as they entered uncharted space. There was no telling what the Sargacs had planned, but one thing was certain. Humanity was about to learn the true meaning of the price they had paid for survival. Whatever happened next, there would be no going back. As the ship continued its journey, the crew braced for the unimaginable, not knowing that their greatest challenge was yet to come. The truth behind the Sargacs' debt would soon be revealed, and with it, the shocking consequences of the favor they had once received. The fate of humanity was in their hands. As the ship glided deeper into the uncharted void, the crew felt a sense of unease settle over them. The stars, once shining brightly, now seemed distant and cold. The ship's engines hummed steadily, but the silence inside felt oppressive. There was no turning back now. Humanity had crossed the threshold, and the unknown stretched out before them like an endless abyss. The captain, Commander Sarah Wells, stood at the helm, her eyes fixed on the navigation screen, her brow furrowed with concern as the ship drew closer to the Sargacs' homeworld. The coordinates they had received were precise, yet there was an odd chill in the air. The planet loomed ahead, a massive world that seemed to watch them with an eerie stillness. "Approaching Sargac system," announced Lieutenant Mark Reynolds, his voice tense. "Sensors picking up. Nothing. No ships, no defenses. It's like the planet's abandoned." Commander Wells' stomach twisted. That doesn't make sense. The Sargacs are a powerful race. They wouldn't leave their homeworld undefended, not after all these years. She could feel the weight of the decision pressing down on her. What was the purpose of this mission? What did the Sargacs really want from them? And why had they sent only one ship to face such an unknown? "Stay sharp, everyone," she ordered, her voice steady despite the anxiety creeping up her spine. "Prepare for planetary entry. We need answers." As the ship entered the atmosphere of the Sargacs' homeworld, the crew's tension grew. The planet below was a world of towering spires and vast cities, an ancient civilization that had once been the pinnacle of galactic power. But now, the landscape seemed eerily quiet. There were no signs of life, no bustling cities, no spaceships in orbit. It was as though the Sargacs had simply vanished. The ship descended slowly, touching down on a vast, desolate plain. The surface was rocky and barren, with strange, glowing crystals embedded in the earth. It was beautiful, in a way, but also unsettling. As the landing gear locked into place, a strange silence settled over the crew. They were about to meet the aliens who had saved them, but something felt wrong. "Captain, we're down," Lieutenant Reynolds said, his voice barely a whisper. "But I don't see anything. No welcoming party." "We're on our own here," Commander Wells muttered, gripping the armrest in front of her. "Let's move out." The crew suited up and prepared to disembark. As they made their way to the airlock, Commander Wells could feel her heart pounding in her chest. What kind of reception would they get? Were the Sargacs waiting to collect their debt, or was there something more sinister at play? Whatever it was, she knew one thing. They were not prepared for what lay ahead. The airlock hissed as it opened, and the crew stepped out onto the alien soil. The ground beneath their boots was solid, yet there was something unsettling about the way the landscape stretched out before them. No signs of life, no movement, just an oppressive silence. The only sound was the soft echo of their footsteps. As the crew advanced, the tension mounted. They scanned the area with their sensors, searching for any signs of activity. Nothing. No energy signatures. No life forms. Just the strange, glowing crystals scattered across the plain. Suddenly, a low hum filled the air. At first, it was barely audible, but it quickly grew louder, resonating deep in their bones. The crew halted in their tracks, eyes darting around in confusion. "Do you hear that?" Lieutenant Reynolds asked, his voice shaky. "I hear it," Commander Wells replied, her hand instinctively going to her sidearm. "Stay alert." The humming intensified, vibrating through the very ground beneath them. Then, without warning, the crystals embedded in the ground began to glow brighter, casting an eerie light across the plain. The crew's sensors suddenly flared to life, picking up energy readings from all around them. "What's happening?" asked Ensign Lee, his voice tinged with fear. "It's not the Sargax," Commander Wells muttered, a cold realization creeping over her. "This isn't what we were expecting." The crew's hearts raced. What debt? Humanity had never asked for this. They had come here seeking answers, not to become pawns in an ancient game. "We did not come to be part of some ancient struggle," Commander Wells replied firmly, trying to regain control of the situation. "We came because we needed help. The Sargax promised us aid against our enemies. What is this all about?" The being's eyes glowed brighter, as if it were considering her words carefully. Then it spoke again, its tone almost predatory. "The Sargax were merely a tool in a much larger game. You are here because you are at the center of that game now. You see, humanity has something we need." Lieutenant Reynolds took a step back. "What could we possibly have that you want?" The being smiled, and for the first time, its expression seemed to shift, becoming less cold and more calculating. "Humanity has a unique property, something that even the Sargax never had: potential. You have the ability to evolve, to adapt in ways no other species can. You have the power to change the future, to rewrite the rules." Commander Wells' mind raced. What was it saying? Potential, evolution, adaptation. Was this the reason they had been chosen? They weren't just a tool in the architect's plan. They were the key. "But why us?" she asked, her voice steady but full of disbelief. "Why humanity?" The architect's eyes gleamed. "Because you are not like the others. You see, every other species we have encountered, every other civilization we have touched, has fallen into stagnation. They reach a peak and then plateau. But not you. Not humanity. Your potential for growth, for destruction, for evolution, it is unparalleled. That is why you are here." The weight of the words hung heavy in the air. Humanity wasn't here by accident. They were part of a larger scheme, a plan that spanned beyond their understanding, and they had no choice but to play along. But Commander Wells knew one thing for sure: the Sargax had not led them here. The architects had been watching humanity all along, and now they had come to collect. The crew had been pawns in a game far bigger than they could have imagined. A low rumble echoed from the ground beneath their feet, causing the crew to stagger. The monolith, the source of the strange power, was vibrating, its surface rippling as if something was awakening inside. The architects were not just here for a debt. They were preparing for something much worse. "We didn't come here to be part of your plan," Commander Wells said, her voice sharp. "We came to get answers, and we will leave with them." The architect chuckled softly, the sound like a distant thunderstorm. "You will have your answers, Commander. But the question remains, can humanity handle the truth?" Before she could respond, the ground cracked open beneath them, sending the crew into chaos. The sky above shifted, and the very fabric of the world seemed to bend. Something was happening. Something far bigger than they could control. As the crew scrambled to regain their footing, they realized that this was just the beginning. The architects had played their hand, and humanity was now caught in the web of an ancient, far-reaching conspiracy. The battle for survival had only just begun. The ground continued to shake beneath them, the deep rumble growing louder by the second. The crew scrambled to maintain their footing as the monstrous monolith cracked open, revealing a swirling abyss beneath them. The air was charged with an eerie energy, thick with an unsettling hum that reverberated through their bones. Commander Wells felt her heart race as she glanced at the architect before them. Its calm demeanor remained unchanged, even as the world around them seemed to fall apart. The architect's glowing eyes flickered, and for a moment, There was a strange flash of something resembling amusement. "You defy us, Commander Wells," the being said, its voice vibrating in their minds. "But it is already too late. The wheels are in motion. Humanity's fate was sealed the moment you set foot on this world." Lieutenant Reynolds pulled his weapon from its holster, his hands trembling. "We didn't come here for your games," he growled, though his voice lacked confidence. "If you want to fight, we'll give you one." Wells grabbed his arm, forcing him to lower the weapon. "No, don't provoke it. We need to understand what's going on, not fight a force we don't understand." The architect tilted its head, as if considering them. "You think you can resist what is already in motion?" it asked, its voice growing cold. "Humanity is already part of something much larger than your comprehension. Your power, your will, your potential. It all leads to the same conclusion. You cannot escape what's coming. The price for your defiance is inevitable." Suddenly, the ground cracked wider, and a burst of radiant light shot up from the abyss, illuminating the sky. The crew shielded their eyes from the blinding light, but it did nothing to dampen the rising sense of dread that clung to the air. Wells could hear the whispering voices, though no one else seemed to notice them. They were talking to her. "You can't stop us. You are part of the plan." The whispers echoed louder, making her head spin. They weren't just words. They were commands, imposing thoughts that wrapped around her mind like chains. She wanted to scream, to tear herself free from the grip of the architect's influence, but the whispers were everywhere. "You feel it, don't you?" The architect's voice came again, calm but filled with underlying menace. "The true nature of your place in this universe, the burden of your potential, the truth of what awaits you." Wells gritted her teeth. "What do you want from us?" she demanded, her voice hard despite the overwhelming pressure threatening to crush her will. The architect's glowing eyes dimmed as if reflecting some ancient sorrow. "We do not want. We have taken. You have already given us what we need." The Sargacs were a failed experiment. They did not understand the value of the gift we gave them. But you, humanity, you are different. Commander Wells, struggling to hold her composure, asked, "What do you mean? What gift?" "The Sargacs. Did they come here seeking something from you?" The architect's expression shifted into something darker. "They came seeking power. They wanted to control the stars. They wanted immortality. They believed they could harness the very force that we used to create them. They thought they could break the rules we set. But they were wrong." The monolith's vibrations intensified, and suddenly, a wave of psychic energy rippled through the air, hitting the crew like a powerful gust of wind. The sensation was overwhelming, as if the very fabric of their reality was being torn apart, leaving them vulnerable, exposed. The architect continued, unfazed by the visible discomfort in the humans before it. "You, however, have the potential to do more than the Sargacs ever could. You possess the ability to transcend, to ascend, to become something greater than you are." A cold chill swept through Commander Wells' spine. "Ascend? Become what?" The architect's smile was almost pitying. "It is not your place to understand yet, Commander. You will learn soon enough." With a sudden gesture, the architect's form shifted, its figure becoming a blur of light and shadow. Then, in an instant, it was gone. The light from the abyss dimmed, and the vibrations ceased. For a moment, the crew stood in stunned silence, unsure of what had just transpired. The oppressive weight of the architect's words hung heavily over them, like an unseen hand tightening around their throats. They had just been given a glimpse into something incomprehensibly vast and dangerous. But Commander Wells didn't have the luxury of time to question it. A sudden crackling sound broke through the silence, and she turned to see a massive ship emerging from the clouds. Its silhouette was vast, and its metallic surface gleamed ominously against the setting sun. "Get back to the ship now," Wells barked, snapping her crew into action. The sudden appearance of the alien ship meant trouble was coming, and they needed to be prepared. But as they hurried toward their vessel, Commander Wells couldn't shake the gnawing feeling in the pit of her stomach. The architects had given them a glimpse of what was to come, and it was clear that humanity's involvement in this cosmic drama had only just begun. Something far greater than they had imagined was unfolding, and it was going to take everything they had just to survive. As the crew boarded their ship, the large, glowing vessel in the distance loomed like an approaching storm, ready to unleash its fury. Wells knew there would be no escape. The architects had set their plans in motion. And now, humanity was caught in the middle. The ship's engines roared to life, the vibrations humming through Commander Wells' bones as the crew hurriedly strapped themselves into their seats. The view outside the cockpit was nothing short of catastrophic. An endless sky of dark clouds swirling around the massive alien vessel now hanging above them, like a harbinger of doom. The enormous ship was moving slowly, its surface gleaming like dark chrome in the failing light of the planet's setting sun. "We need to get out of here now," Lieutenant Reynolds yelled, his eyes wide with fear. But Commander Wells stayed focused, her fingers dancing over the controls. The engine's hum was the only sound that filled the room, a constant reminder of their dwindling time. "Not yet," Wells replied, her voice steady despite the mounting pressure. "We need to understand what we're dealing with before we make any decisions." The silence in the cockpit was thick, almost suffocating. The crew exchanged uneasy glances, but none of them dared speak. The sight of the alien ship hovering above them, its enormous size dwarfing their own vessel, left them feeling powerless and insignificant. It was as though the very presence of the ship weighed down on their spirits, a constant reminder that they were no longer the dominant force in this galaxy. "We've never seen anything like this," Ensign Taylor muttered, his voice trembling with a mixture of awe and terror. "How are we supposed to fight something like that?" Commander Wells didn't answer right away. She wasn't sure she had an answer either. The architects had made it clear that they were not dealing with an ordinary alien race. The enormous ship before them wasn't just a weapon. It was a statement. It was a testament to the power and influence of the architects, who had now chosen humanity as their next target. Wells' mind raced through their options. They could try to run, but where could they go? This was no ordinary foe. The architects had given them the illusion of choice, but it was clear now that their fate had already been decided for them. It was just a matter of time before the war began. A flashing red light on the control panel pulled her from her thoughts. A warning. Enemy ships were on the move. "Commander," Reynolds said, his voice barely above a whisper. "They're launching. It's happening." The entire crew turned to the view screen, eyes wide as several smaller vessels shot out from the alien ship like darts, heading directly for their position. They were fast, sleek, and terrifyingly advanced, designed to overwhelm any opposition in an instant. No amount of training had prepared them for this. "Braced for impact," Wells shouted, her hands tight on the controls as she tried to avoid the incoming fire. The first wave of enemy ships opened fire, their weapons flashing in streaks of blue light, lighting up the darkened sky like lightning strikes. The ship shook violently as the first shot hit its shields, the force of the blast pushing them sideways. The crew was thrown against their harnesses, but Wells fought to keep control. Her eyes flicked from the weapons display to the damage control systems, every second counting as she navigated their ship through the hail of fire. They couldn't afford to take a hit like that again. "Return fire, now," Wells commanded. Reynolds and Taylor moved into position, launching a volley of counterattacks at the incoming ships. But the alien vessels were too fast, too agile. Their energy shields absorbed the blasts without so much as a flicker. "We're not doing any damage," Reynolds yelled, frustration creeping into his voice. Wells gritted her teeth, fighting to maintain composure. "Keep firing. They're getting closer." Outside, the alien ships moved with terrifying precision, surrounding them in a perfect circle. No matter how fast they maneuvered, there was nowhere to hide. The architects had designed their attack with ruthless efficiency. This wasn't just a battle. It was a statement, a demonstration of their utter superiority. "Commander," "We can't hold them off like this," Ensign Taylor cried, panic rising in his voice. "We need a plan." Wells knew he was right. They had nothing left to fight with. They were surrounded, outgunned, and outclassed. Their shields were weakening with every passing second, and their weapons barely made a dent in the enemy forces. But then, something happened. A loud hum filled the cockpit, followed by a strange, vibrating sensation in the floor beneath their feet. It was faint at first, like a low-frequency signal, but it quickly intensified. The crew exchanged confused glances. "What is that?" Reynolds asked, his voice a mix of curiosity and fear. Wells didn't have an answer, but one thing was certain. They were no longer alone in the fight. Without warning, a burst of light exploded in the distance, far beyond the alien fleet. At first, it appeared to be a simple flash, nothing more than an anomaly in the vast emptiness of space. But as it grew, it became clear. It wasn't just a flash. It was a ship. A human ship. The vessel appeared out of nowhere, its sleek design unlike any the crew had seen before. It was massive, and its weapons systems pulsed with energy, charging up for a devastating strike. The alien fleet hesitated, momentarily caught off guard by the sudden appearance of the new threat. That's one of ours," Taylor exclaimed. Wells' heart skipped a beat. Had they been saved? Was this part of their plan all along? But the truth quickly became apparent. The ship that had appeared wasn't there to negotiate peace. It was there to fight. The new human ship fired its weapons, launching a barrage of energy blasts at the alien ships surrounding them. The energy from the blasts was unlike anything they had ever seen before. Pure, unrelenting force that tore through the alien shields like paper. In a matter of seconds, the alien vessels were falling one by one, their sleek designs being reduced to debris. The architects' forces were disintegrating before their eyes, their perfect plan being shattered by the unexpected arrival of humanity's hidden weapon. The crew sat in stunned silence, unable to process what had just happened. Was this the beginning of their victory? Or was it simply the first step in a larger, more dangerous conflict? Commander Wells didn't know, but one thing was clear. Humanity had just taken its first real stand against the architects, and they had sent a clear message. This war was far from over. Commander Wells stood at the viewport, her hands gripping the cool metal railing as she watched the battle unfold. The massive alien fleet, once so sure of its dominance, was now in disarray. The newly arrived human warship, unlike anything the crew had ever seen, tore through the ranks of the alien vessels with overwhelming force. Energy blasts streaked across the battlefield, ripping through shields and tearing ships apart in moments. But despite the victory on the horizon, Wells could sense something more beneath the surface. A shift. The aliens were not retreating, not yet. They were regrouping, adapting, preparing for a final assault. And they would not go down quietly. "Commander, the alien flagship is charging up." Ensign Taylor's voice broke through her thoughts, his eyes wide with fear and awe. "It's gathering energy. It looks like they're going to fire something massive." Wells' heart skipped a beat. They hadn't seen anything like this before. The alien flagship was massive, vastly larger than the other ships in the fleet, and it now glowed with an ominous, flickering energy. "Can we stop it?" Wells asked, turning quickly to her tactical officer, Lieutenant Reynolds. Reynolds didn't answer immediately. His fingers danced over the control panel, his face tight with concentration. "Our weapons aren't powerful enough to pierce its shields, not without devastating our own ship's systems. But I think we have a chance." "Explain," Wells demanded, her voice sharp. Reynolds didn't hesitate. "There's a weakness in the flagship's energy buildup. If we can find the right frequency and hit it with our weapons at the same time, we can destabilize its core before it fires." Wells nodded, her mind racing. It was risky. No, it was dangerous. But it was their only shot. If that ship fired, it could wipe out the entire fleet in one strike. They couldn't let that happen. "Do it," "Now," she commanded, her voice unwavering. As Reynolds relayed the order to the crew, Wells turned back to the viewport. The alien flagship was now fully charged, and a massive beam of energy was forming at its bow. It was growing brighter by the second, and the air around them seemed to thrum with its power. "Ready, Commander," Reynolds called out, his voice tight. "Target locked. We're firing in 3, 2, 1. A powerful surge of energy shot from their own warship, vibrating the entire vessel. The beam collided with the flagship's energy field just as it fired its own beam toward the fleet. The two forces collided in a spectacular explosion of light, the shockwave rippling through the surrounding space. For a moment, the world seemed to hold its breath. Then the flagship shuddered, its energy shield cracking like glass. Another blast from their ship struck the core, and the alien flagship erupted in a violent explosion that shook the very stars around them. The massive ship crumpled inward, its once proud form breaking apart as its energy core collapsed. The battlefield fell silent. Wells allowed herself a moment to breathe, relief flooding her veins. The alien flagship was gone, but even as the alien fleet faltered, she knew it was far from over. There was still too much unknown. "Status report," she barked, her mind already shifting to the next challenge. "Enemy forces are retreating, Commander," Lieutenant Reynolds reported, his voice tinged with disbelief. We actually did it. The flagship's destruction has thrown them into disarray. They're pulling back." Wells exhaled, but the weight of the situation didn't lift. "It's not over yet. They'll regroup. This is just a temporary victory." A tense silence hung in the air. The crew knew it too. They had won a battle, but the war was far from finished. The architects had made it clear. Humanity had just begun to be a thorn in their side, and the consequences of that defiance would be far-reaching. "We need to prepare for their next move," Wells said, turning toward her crew. "We have no idea what they'll throw at us next. Get ready for anything." Suddenly, a low, haunting hum filled the ship, a strange alien sound that seemed to reverberate in the very walls of the vessel. The crew looked at each other in confusion and fear. "What's that?" Reynolds asked, his voice trembling slightly. "I don't know," Wells replied. "But it doesn't sound good." Before she could issue another command, the hum grew louder, more intense, until it was deafening. The ship's systems began to flicker, and the lights in the cockpit dimmed. The crew looked around in growing panic, unsure of what was happening. And then the answer came. A sudden, deafening explosion rocked the ship from below, sending the crew flying as alarms blared throughout the vessel. "What the hell was that?" Reynolds shouted, scrambling to regain his footing. Wells clutched the control panel, trying to steady herself. "It's coming from the planet," she shouted, her voice filled with alarm. "Something's happening on the surface. We're under attack." The crew rushed to the monitors, their eyes widening as they saw what was happening. Below them, the planet itself was shaking, cracks appearing in the surface as something massive rose from beneath the ground. "It's them," Wells muttered, barely believing what she was seeing. "They've been hiding something beneath the surface all along." Another blast rocked the ship, and Wells braced herself. "Get us out of here, Lieutenant. Now." But as they scrambled to escape, the true scale of the alien threat became clear. The architects had not only sent their fleet, but they had also unleashed a hidden weapon beneath the planet's surface, one that would change the tide of the battle forever. The ship groaned under the strain as Commander Wells and her crew watched in disbelief. The ground below was cracking open, revealing something far worse than anyone had expected. The alien fleet had been bad enough, but this new threat, this was something the humans had never faced before. "Brace for impact," Wells shouted as another tremor shook the ship violently. The crew scrambled to stabilize themselves, and alarms blared throughout the vessel, signaling that the ship was starting to lose power. The planet below was becoming an unrecognizable war zone as monstrous structures rose from its surface, their purpose unclear but undeniably threatening. "We need to get out of here, Commander." Lieutenant Reynolds called from his station, his face pale as he watched the devastation unfolding below. "The planet's surface is destabilizing. If we stay any longer, we won't make it out alive." Wells turned, her eyes narrowing as she assessed the situation. She had always been calm under pressure, but this was different. The massive alien structures rising from the ground weren't just ordinary weapons. They were something more. Alien designs that looked both ancient and advanced, pulsing with energy. "We can't just run, Lieutenant." "Not yet," she said, her voice firm. "We need to know what we're dealing with before we make a move." But before Reynolds could argue, another explosion rocked the ship, this time closer. The crew members stumbled, and the entire ship shuddered. They were running out of time. "Commander, look!" Ensign Taylor yelled from the viewport, pointing at the planet's surface. Out of the smoke and chaos, a towering, monstrous figure began to rise, its colossal limbs breaking through the surface like a beast awakened from ancient slumber. It was unlike anything Wells had ever seen. Towering, dark, and covered in a strange, shifting armor that glimmered in the fading light. "It's them," Wells whispered in horror. "The architects have unleashed their final weapon." The beast continued to rise, and Wells knew that the time for hesitation was over. The alien fleet had already been routed, but now it was clear that the battle for survival was far from won. "We need to destroy it, now," Wells ordered, snapping out of her shock. She turned to Reynolds. "Can we fire the main weapon?" Reynolds worked frantically at his console, his fingers flying over the controls. "We can, but it'll take a few minutes to power up." "It's risky, Commander." She didn't hesitate. "Do it. We don't have any other options." The massive structure below them continued its ascent, the ground trembling beneath the ship. Its massive limbs reached higher and higher, and its glowing core pulsed with an eerie energy that threatened to engulf the entire planet. "We're running out of time," Reynolds shouted. Wells stared at the rising behemoth below them. She couldn't allow it to reach full power. The stakes had just escalated beyond anything she had ever imagined. If they couldn't stop this creature now, it would destroy everything they had worked for. The entire galaxy was at risk. The warship's cannons powered up with a deep, resonating hum. Wells gritted her teeth as the ship prepared its final assault. "Ready," Reynolds called. "Firing in 3, 2, 1. The ship's weapons fired with immense power, the energy beams shooting out in a concentrated blast that struck the creature directly in the chest. But the creature barely flinched. The energy shield surrounding it absorbed the impact, and the beams dispersed harmlessly into the void. "No," Wells shouted in frustration. "It's too strong. We need to find another way." The creature's enormous eye, if it could be called that, glowed ominously. The entire planet seemed to respond, as if the beast was calling forth the very core of the world to empower it further. Wells watched in horror as the ground split open in more places, revealing other terrifying structures emerging from beneath the surface. "We need to get out of here," Reynolds yelled, fear evident in his voice. But before they could make any moves, a bright flash of light filled the entire view screen. The creature was charging up, its massive energy core flaring to life, ready to launch an unimaginable attack that would surely obliterate everything in its path. "Brace for impact," Wells screamed, throwing herself to the floor as the ship was rocked by a shockwave of energy from the planet's surface. The ship lurched violently, alarms blaring as the controls flickered and failed. The crew struggled to keep the vessel intact, but it was clear they were losing the fight. As the massive creature unleashed its final devastating blast, Wells realized that their only chance for survival rested on one final desperate action. They had to push the limits of their weapons, their ship, everything they had, and they had to do it now. "Full power to the weapons," Wells ordered, her voice unyielding. "We are not going down without a fight." In a last, desperate move, The ship fired its remaining power into one concentrated beam of energy. The blinding light shot out, cutting through space and striking the creature directly in its core. The creature let out a horrifying, unearthly roar as it was struck by the full force of the blast. Its energy shield cracked, and its massive form began to break apart, piece by piece. For a moment, it seemed as though the battle had ended. The ship shuddered as the last of the alien weapon collapsed, and the remnants of the monstrous creature fell to the ground in a heap of broken metal and glowing debris. But the silence didn't last long. Wells looked out at the destruction. The creature had fallen, but the damage was immense. The planet was in ruins, and the battle was only just beginning. The architects had learned something about humanity. They had learned that even against impossible odds, humans would fight until the very end. "We won this fight," Wells said, her voice steady despite the exhaustion that weighed on her. "But we haven't seen the last of them." The war was far from over. The architects had underestimated humanity before, and they would do so again. But next time, humanity would be ready.